What's up everyone, Clark Glassford, founder of My Practice Interview, where I help you land your dream job. And today we're talking about how you answer a common interview question, which is, tell me about your weaknesses. Yes, you can be faced with this question. Yes, it can throw you off track. If you're asked this question and you're just prepared to talk about your strengths, why you're the best person for this role, and how come you're so awesome, they should have hired you yesterday. But sometimes the question comes up, tell me about your weakness, and you're kind of like a deer in headlights. How do I answer this? Well, I've got the perfect step-by-step formula to help you answer with an actual example that I'll use from myself as to how I would answer this question. I am a 25-year HR professional, recruiter, know all aspects of HR. I am here to help guide you through the interview process, and we're gonna tackle this question. Are you ready? I am. Here we go. Okay, so why do employers ask you, tell me about your weakness? You want to be focused on strengths? They want to ask a weakness question? What's up with that? Well, sometimes they ask this question. There's really three reasons why I would put this into some of the questions I'd ask in an interview if I was interviewing you for a position. So first, it shows you're human. You're not a robot that's emotionless and has nothing to work on. It shows that you're a human being, and all of us humans, we do have weaknesses. And so I would like to know what yours are in anticipation for the role that I'm considering you for, to see if you're going to be a fit. But that's just not it. That's not everything. The second part of that is, are you self-aware? Are you self-aware of what your weaknesses are and kind of the steps you take to mitigate that weakness to not make it detrimental and have a negative impact on how you are at work and in performing your duties? So that's the second reason. The third reason I ask this question is, well, to see if you're aware enough that you want to develop yourself. You've got some self-improvement initiatives. You're aware enough about your weaknesses and the steps you've taken to improve and continue to improve. So it's that self-development, self-awareness piece that's really important for me as an employer. And getting that information out of you helps me make a really informed hiring decision as to whether you're right for the role. So I've got several tips here that I want to walk through before I give you an actual example based on myself as to how you would answer this question. Okay, tip number one, avoid cliches. Well, what does that mean, avoid cliches? Well, the standard answer we hear to these questions, us employers, us recruiters, I'm a perfectionist. I always do things to 100% of my ability. I work too hard in every role that I occupy, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't tell me anything about a weakness for you. It actually, you're trying to somewhat mask a strength as a weakness, and it's just a cliche that comes up in interviews all the time. Avoid those cliches. I want to hear actual weaknesses that you have. Next, be honest. Be honest about a weakness. Like I said at the beginning, we all have weaknesses. We're not 100% perfect in all the tasks that we do. So identify that weakness. Now I get it. You are walking a bit of a tightrope here. You're trying to identify a weakness that doesn't tip you into the disqualified category, like, uh-oh, red flag, need to avoid this applicant at all costs. So it's being aware of that weakness and trying to articulate it in a way that's not going to be a red flag for that employer, okay? Be honest, but be strategic is very important here. So this is where the strategy piece comes in. Be strategic in that you're identifying a weakness that has perhaps a negative impact on how you work, but you take steps to improve it, and those steps that you've used to improve it will help you in the role that you've applied for. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how we get to this in the example I'm going to give you at the end of this video. So please stay tuned to that. Next, tips, frame it as personal growth. So that personal growth piece is, yes, I'm aware of this weakness, but here's all the things I do to help improve myself in that weakness area. And that shows an employer that you're aware and you're taking steps and continued steps to improve on this specific weakness. Next tip, tell a story. So you want to frame this weakness answer in a story. You don't want to just say, I suck at multitasking. My decision making is not really good. I don't work with others too well. That kind of thing. You don't want to just leave it there. You want to be able to weave it into a bit of a story. I've got a formula for you. That's how you do this. And tell a story as to identifying what that weakness is, some of the actions you've taken, and the results you achieve as a result of those actions. So really important that you're prepared to tell a story. The next step here is practice. I know you're sick of hearing me say that. If you've watched my videos before, I'm always talking about practice, but it's true. You want to practice being able to answer this question. It's so key to being able to really nail it in an interview. Does it come up in every interview? No, it doesn't. This question doesn't get asked in every interview, but you do want to be prepared to answer it in case it does come up, because you don't want to be caught off guard without having anything proper to say. Okay, so those are the tips in terms of starting how you're thinking about what an answer would be and framing out an answer. Next here, I want to give you a formula. Okay, so choose an actual weakness, right? We don't want to come up with those cliches we talked about. You want to identify an actual weakness that pertains to you. Next, you want to describe what you do and the actions you take to mitigate that weakness. It's really important. So the actions you take to mitigate the weakness are super key in being able to answer this question and start building out that story that we talked about before. And finally, what are the results you have achieved based on those actions you've taken? All right, so choose an actual weakness, talk about the steps you take to mitigate that weakness, and then demonstrate the results of all of your efforts. All right. So now that we've laid the framework there and the foundation as to how you answer this question, let me walk you through how I would answer it based on my own personal experience and a weakness of mine. Here we go. So here's what I would say should I be asked the question, tell me about your weaknesses. One of the areas of personal weakness for me can be attention to detail. I work in a very fast-paced environment, lots of tasks on my plate. Multitasking is key in the role that I occupy. When I have a lot of tasks on my plate, if there is a particular task that requires a high attention to detail, if I'm not focused on that task and letting other distractions come in, it can really have a negative impact on me if I'm not being particularly mindful of this and being purposeful in focusing on that task so I don't make mistakes. So here's the actions I take to make sure I minimize any sort of negative consequence from a lack of attention to detail. What I start with is I make sure all distractions are off. I focus on that task, so I make sure notifications are off on my email. I turn off the ringer on my phone and any sort of notification that may come in through text messages. I dedicate time in my calendar so that I can solely focus on this task. That allows me the focus that I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. I also use other tools, so scheduling tools, task reminders in my calendar, so that I blocked out things to purposely focus on that task. That really helps me with the focus I need so that when it comes to looking at something that requires a high attention to detail, I'm prepared for that. The result is I greatly minimize the attention to detail mistakes that I could make if I'm unfocused and I'm distracted with all of the other tasks in my day-to-day job. Now, that is how you answer that question. I identified a real weakness that's for me. I talked about the action steps that I take to minimize any sort of negative impact of that weakness, and then I talk about the results. It shows that employer I'm aware, I am a human, I have actual weaknesses that I continually work towards to help improve, to make myself better in those areas. That is how you answer that question. You will knock it out of the park if you follow that formula and come up and make sure you're prepared in advance with an actual weakness to answer that question. That's it for this week. It's a shorty, but a goodie. As always, follow, like, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time. I'm posting videos all the time. Until then, keep on rocking those interviews.